Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Rebellious Wellness Lifestyle. Today, I have Brent Eck, and I'm so excited. I think you're going to be too when you hear what he's all about. You know that I'm a data head, and I like things that track, Oura Ring, Fitbit, and there's so many more things that I'm just discovering. And Brent has been in this business of health and wellness for what, 2 decades, Brent?
Yeah, a little over 20 years.
Metagenics. What started you on let me just tell people who you are by reading your bios. The company that we're talking about today mostly is called Sage Healthspan. And it began over 2 decades ago. You were in the healthcare industry, and you say you witnessed firsthand the limitations of reactive medicine and traditional medical approaches. You and I are kindred there. And so you turned to preventive health optimization, and then data-driven health tracking led you to develop this product. But was there something in your life, a health issue that got you started down this path of getting away from the reactive medicine?
Yeah, it's a rough story. I would just say my dad died when I was 20 from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's one
Yeah.
of those things that it's astonishing. I'm going to be 50 this year, and every day I think about my father. It's you
I'm with
never
you.
you never stop missing these important people in your life. And now that I have children, it's oh my God, I am the father. It's the craziest thing in the world. But he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 20, and to be honest, like he had a bunch of different bouts of cancer. I think the first time was when I was in third grade. So cancer was like the fifth member of our family, so to speak, when I was growing up. It turns out it was probably all different manifestations of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But at that time, like state of the art was a stem cell transplant, I think it was called, to treat non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so my dad was a pretty robust guy, like me, 6 foot, 200 pounds. When you go through that stem cell transplant process, it's brutal, right? At one point, he had sores coming from outside of his mouth all through his GI tract and then
Oh,
out of his rectum, right? He couldn't use
eh.
his GI tract forever. I think he got down to 80 pounds at one point. But like I have this distinct memory in my mind of him getting intravenously fed lipids. And I remember the nurse calling it McDonald's in a bottle. Like at the time, that was a clever thing, right? But lo and behold, a few years later, I was living in Europe, working in general management roles for the company that made intravenous lipids and
Hmm.
intravenous nutrition. The company called Fresenius Kabi. It's the largest manufacturer of intravenous nutrition in the world. All 100% of the intravenous lipids, I think, in the world, there might be a manufacturer in China now, are made by this company, Fresenius. It's a really cool company. It does a whole bunch of different things, but I was on the nutrition side. And so that's I guess how I got into it in the weirdest way possible. And that was a great trajectory. I was a dozen years at that company for Fresenius, helping them develop and market intravenous nutrition products and oral nutrition products, so hospital nutrition products. Basically, their stuff is used in a hospital or long-term care facility setting. And you've got to be pretty sick to know who that company is. It's what we used to a bad joke about Fresenius. God, I hope you never know who we are because you're not going to be very well if you do. That doesn't mean our products are great for those individuals. Products certainly aren't causing the problem, they're helping the problem. But they're meant for people whose GI tract is compromised meaningfully in some way, shape, or form. So you cannot absorb nutrition through your GI tract. And so there you really realize, okay, nutrition is critical for keeping individuals like my father at that time alive for a few more years. Thanks to parenteral nutrition, my father was actually able to recover from that stem cell therapy and get another 3 or 4 years of life,
Nice.
stem cell transplant, get another 3 or 4 years of life with me, which is wonderful. So I'm super thankful for that nutrition. But that was part of my journey was to realize, okay, in the hospital setting, like the problem is way further upstream, right? So many cancers are metabolic related. Certainly, metabolic issues are one of the core issues of our generation. So I want to get further upstream. I want to start helping people before they're past the point of really needing nutrition. And so I went and ran a business called Metagenics, which is a supplement company. It's been around for years. It was started by Jeff Bland. It was started by the same guys that started the whole functional medicine movement. So metagenics and functional medicine were synonymous with each other for a number of years. And it was really a great business. And the soul of that business is really about helping doctors apply sort of naturopathic philosophies, if I could call it that way, really think about root cause medicine and really think about using nutrition in their healthcare practice to help patients live happier, healthier lives. And so Metagenics would be focused deeply on the education and then deeply on creating products, protocols, and programs to help those doctors treat people with nutrition. So that was my whole trajectory, and I saw a lot there. And we did a ton of research when I was at Metagenics. It's one of the few nutrition brands that is doing a bunch of research. And so a big part of what we were doing was setting up systems and programs so that we could capture data from all kinds of patients on how nutrition was actually working on them. So we set up this program for just Metagenics employees. We had 500 employees in the US, a little bit more than that. And we got them all unbelievably comprehensive panels, blood panels every 6 months. If they were willing, we got them full DNA tests. We got them using wearables. We put them all on functional medicine protocols. And we just started gathering data on all these people. So, like, what nutrition programs work, in what setting is, I don't know, a ketogenic diet right? In what area is probiotics going to have more impact than less impact, or what have you? It was an amazing program we ran for years at Metagenics. There were people whose lives we literally saved, right? Because we uncovered things in their blood or things in their genetics that could have been life-threatening before they became life-threatening. But I had a couple realizations as we were designing these programs. The first one is so many of these functional medicine protocols are just too complex, right? If you
Mm.
listen to the functional medicine community, you can find unbelievable success stories, right? And they talk about those success stories all the time. And there has just been remarkable health transformations by people in functional medicine. But what nobody talks about is how hard it is to adhere to a lot of those protocols and how so many people dropped off. So just as a statistic, less than 10% of Metagenics employees could stay on a functional medicine protocol 80% of the time. That was kind of the metric. Can they live by the 80-20 rule,
80/20. Yeah.
which I'm a big advocate of? Can they live by in the 80% realm on a functional medicine protocol? And the reality was less than 10% could.
Mm.
Nobody talks about that. And so you start uncovering that, and we did a lot of work with those folks to talk about it. And really, I think one of the things that we discovered is that for people to adhere to some of these important things, these foundational things that we think are great for bringing health and health span, for people to adhere to those things, they have to adopt a psychological approach of learning health as a skill set, is kind of the way I would put it. Because I think we either have or we don't have health. It
Mm.
was one of the fun questions we used to always ask: what is health to you? It's a little bit one of those things like love. When you have it, you know it. When you don't have it, you know it as well. But where that transition point is a little bit hard to find. And so one of the notions that we came up with is really health is a skill you have to learn. And I think if you look at folks out there, I think we're all capable of learning the skill of health. If my body feels this way, how I'm listening to my body, how I react to my body, how I understand what's happening, how I learn about my biology, how I learn about my biomarkers, how does a great night's sleep impact the next day? How does a horrible night's sleep impact the next day? If I get up and I eat well and I don't know, breathe and I don't allow too many bad things to get into my day, how is my body going to react? How do I feel? All of those things are skills we can learn. Just checking in with yourself is such a huge health skill that so many folks forgo. How to read a nutrition label, how to set up your plate for dinner, what have you. There's so many of these things that you can establish for health as a skill set. And so what we learned was, if we back up a little bit and say, instead of just follow this protocol because the doctor told you, we back up a little bit and say, hey, how can we give folks some basic knowledge on health? How can we give them some health as a skill tools so that they can learn the skill of health over time? Can they actually adhere to some of those protocols better? And what we learned is yes, the answer to the question is yes, you can. And so a huge part of that journey is really saying, okay, I'm not going to outsource my health to the doctor. I'm going to become the agent of my own health. And a huge part of that is saying, okay, I need to actually understand what's going on. And to me, was one of the impetuses for Sage. There's 100 places in healthcare we could have started with Sage. But one of the things that drove me nuts is you go to the doctor for an annual physical, and I had just been to the doctor for an annual physical and got my blood drawn and was leaving the office. And he said, listen, I'll call you if something's wrong. And
Great.
I'm the wrong guy to say that to. That's just not, that's
I
just
can
not going to
only
work for
imagine.
me psychologically. And of course, he didn't even call me. It turns out 3 or 4 weeks later, I had to call in and I ended up getting the individual at the front desk and saying, hey, are my blood labs back? How were they? And she said, oh, yeah, they're back. They're in the system. Yeah, there's no notes. Everything should be fine. That's okay. That's not the world I want to live in. So I said, hey, just email me the results. I was able to get them. And then, okay, of course, you spend hours and hours Googling to say, okay, what the heck's a neutrophil? What the hell's
Right.
this? What is this lipid? What is that lipid? Oh, by the way, was this test actually comprehensive? This is the test the doctor ordered for me. I learned about this thing called APOB or LP little a. They weren't even in there. So it was just missing all kinds of things that I thought were important. I was like, okay, let's just start here because I just been there. Let's figure this out. And I did put my test into ChatGPT, and you learn a bunch of stuff when you do that. But what I also discovered is, okay, ChatGPT has no privacy. There's nothing there. So that's how we started. We started with saying, okay, let's start with the data you have as an individual. We all go for an annual physical. We likely all have some form of blood test. Great. Let's help individuals get that into a technology, into a system that is secure. So it's not going to send it to the cloud and give away all your health information, but it gives you the ability to go line by line and understand, okay, what is a neutrophil? What is a basophil? What is a lipid? What is an HDL particle? What is this? What is that? What do these different hormones mean? And how do they interact with each other? We have AI. We use a bunch of AI in the tool, but it's in a what we call a closed network. So basically, we had a bunch of doctors, functional medicine doctors, some of the best trained doctors in the world, build us a data set to say, okay, here's how we understand all these different biomarkers. Here's what high means. Here's what low means. And oh, by the way, if it is low, here's a bunch of different lifestyle things you can do. If it is high, here's a bunch of lifestyle things you can do. And so we built this closed data set, and that's what the AI uses to interpret your results. So what's nice is that prevents the AI from going out into the ether and hallucinating and coming up with things that aren't relevant to you. They're only going to use our data set to interpret your results against. And so we create these personalized interpretations of your data. We will calculate a biological age. If you have the right markers that can calculate a biological age, there's pros and cons to thinking about biological age. I personally think about it as just a composite marker. If it's an interesting way to think about, hey, my biological age is tracking better than my physical age, I'm probably doing some of the right things. And if it's not, I'm probably doing some of the wrong things. So let's modulate it. I don't think it's a good indicator that says I'm going to live 10 years longer than I would have lived otherwise. I don't think that's the way it should be used.
No.
But I'm certainly a big fan of composite markers. So that's how we got into Sage. We started with blood labs. It's free. You can download the app. You can put up to 100 tests that you've taken in for free. We'll help you understand them. We'll help you interpret them. And we actually take it one step further. We actually use our AI to generate 10 questions you should be having with your doctor. Like I have this wonderful dream that if you send your doctor your Sage report before you go in for your annual physical, like for the 9 minutes you have with the doctor, they're not going to spend seven like rehashing the things you told them the last 3 years. They're going to see your data, they're going to see the questions, and hopefully come prepared to have a meaningful conversation with you. So that's the dream. With Sage, we'll also look and see, hey, are you missing things? Did you not get your APOB testing? Have you had your Lp(a) testing? If you're a woman over 40 and starting the journey that starts after 40, have you gotten comprehensive panels? Certainly, my wife is a great example of someone that the medical system failed. She spent 3 years of her body just not behaving the way she expected and went to doctor after doctor, and every doctor did the same thing. Like before they even saw them, made her go out and get this unbelievably comprehensive panel again, didn't interpret it properly, didn't give her the feedback. I think she had the same panel 7 times over 3 years, and
Wow.
actually nothing really changed. It just nobody knew how to interpret it. And my wife was a great example of some of the healthcare system failed her unbelievably. She did finally find a great doctor that she was able to work with and understand what was going on, and then actually get on a program that helped her find her body again, find herself again, and get herself more in a place where she felt comfortable with the way she was feeling. But we all have those examples of where the healthcare system fails. And ironically, part of this journey of learning health as a skill and developing health agency is really seeing through the veil, if that's a way to put it, of how the system is set up and how really it is almost in opposition to helping us learn health as a skill and agency. Like there's all these black boxes that don't need to be there. Like, why don't we have deep conversations with our physicians about our labs unless something is horribly wrong? And then it's really only about that. Why can't
Right.
we have deep conversations with physicians, with coaches, with practitioners of what have you, about how we take where we are and make it better? And so that's really the impetus behind Sage. And we'll sell you those labs if you do have gaps. And if you want to do comprehensive panels with us, you can. And we've got a whole roadmap of other areas in healthcare that is similar to blood labs that we think, okay, let's just try to demystify this. Let's open it up for individuals and hopefully help inspire a new sense of health agency and learn a few new skills about your health.
I
That
love
was a
that.
long answer.
Okay, bye now. No. Okay. No, so the thing, there are so many points that I'm going to try and remember so that I can track back to them. But one of the things you said a bit ago is about the employees who didn't stay on, right? The 80/20, less people stayed on than you would have thought. Whenever I'm working with somebody, I always ask them, what are you willing to do, right? We look at the thing and we say, okay, here's what would be helpful. But is that within your scope of what does your day look like? What do you have time for? What foods don't you like? How can we adjust that? And I think that's something that's really missing in a lot of the taking into the person's agency, if you will, their time commitments, their mental acuity in terms of staying on a program. And then also, many people are anti-data, techie kind of medicine. But it really, and you just proved it, it's just information to help us have better health. And as it was Peter Attia's book got me thinking, the last one, Outlive, about we should be thinking about what we want to do at 80. So we're not training, as so many people are saying on social media, I'm not training to look good in a bikini anymore. I'm training to be able to still hike in the headlands, the marine
And what does he call it?
headlands.
The centenarian decathlon, I think is the term he uses, right?
Exactly.
Or whatever he calls it. Yeah. How do you optimize? What is it? Is it the marginal years? I don't remember exactly the expression
I
he uses,
forget
but
what
it's
he
a brilliant
calls them.
expression, which is like, how do you thrive through those last 10 years?
Exactly, exactly.
And that's the essential what we're trying to do. And I think everybody in the longevity space is talking about how do you live to 150. I think that's interesting. I'm certainly much more tuned in with Peter Attia's approach, which is I'm less interested in how to get to 150 what I am interested in is how do I make the last 10 years awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a skill that many of us haven't learned because we haven't been this age. Like it was easier when you were 20 and 30 and maybe even 40 to stay in good shape and you could get away with eating not such great food. But if you were eating great food, you were really like robust and healthy. And as we get older, there are things that creep up for many
I think for
people.
so many of us, right? And I'll use my mother as an example, right? She's a very vital 85-year-old woman who actually not too long ago was getting up in the middle of the night to go have a piece of cheese out of the fridge. She'll be embarrassed I said that, but that's just how she works.
Our little secret.
And turned around and fell, passed out, not quite sure what happened, and broke her shoulder.
Oh,
And horrible. She was able to recover. She's doing great. Life is good there. But I'll be honest, it took my sister getting to the doctor because my mom said, listen, I need to know what happened. This is not normal. I don't
hmm.
get dizzy spells. I've never had anything like that. I want to uncover what happened because I don't want this event to repeat. And the doctor said, no, you're just 85. It's what happens. It's a thing. And it turns out, she was probably for months had a urinary tract infection that was she had no symptoms for, but nobody looked at it. That's like the easiest thing to diagnose in the world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Go pee on a strip or whatever it takes. And it's so common, especially for women
Yeah.
post menopause, right?
Mm.
To just be suffering through UTIs. And like that should be the first thing somebody goes and looks at. And it took several conversations and insistence from my sister to even get that tested, but likely that was the root cause of what was going on here. And you have to fight the system to get the answer. It's just quite a drag. But that's what gets to health as a skill. And that's where, I would say so many of us, and I think my mom probably falls into this camp, and I don't mean to speak poorly of her, but health is something that she outsourced her whole life.
Mm.
It was something you either have or you don't have. If somebody was sick, it was unfortunate that they got sick. Sure, certainly, she's unbelievably deferential to the system and her doctor. And I don't disagree. You should have a ton of respect for your doctor and the system. But she has no ability to be her own advocate. She certainly needs somebody there to be her own advocate. And at 85, I think she has the opportunity to learn some new health skills. But the time to learn is much earlier, right? Is way
Yeah.
before these things are happening. How to eat properly, how to. I don't think she should be getting up at 3 in the morning and cheese out of her fridge, but that's a discussion for a different day. But I
Oh.
don't think she's ever spent a lot of time thinking about health as a skill as something she really wanted to get better at, something she wanted to learn how to do. And that's where I think that mental frame can take people a lot of places.
Yeah, and as I always say, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. So anybody listening to this or is going to read the transcript, and I find that a lot of times these things come to our awareness when we've been thinking, maybe I should check this out, or maybe I have high blood sugar because I get these highs and lows. And then you hear something about how to track that, and you go, I don't want to get a CGM. I'm not going to put a glucose monitor on because whatever. So I encourage people listening, if you've been having this inkling and you just happened upon this podcast and something comes up for you, take the next step. Find out what you can do to learn. Okay, so what skills does this person listening need? Not everybody needs the same skills. A lot of people have some, like people have others. But what is missing? And this is another thing I go through with my, like, here are the 5 categories that I think are important to look at. Where do you think you're strong and where's your weakest one? Let's start with the weakest one. You're good over here, right? Your sleep is excellent, perfect, but you're eating like crap. So
I
let's
can
work there.
probably guess your five, right? Because these are the foundational things that we've all got to master. We've all got to master how to maintain calorie balance and get adequate protein. We've all got to master how to sleep well. We've got to all master how to stay away from the bad stuff like alcohol and cigarettes and what have you. We've all got to master how to manage stress and how to deal with stress in our life. We've all got to master like how to get the right amount of exercise and what that amount means for you and how to start thinking about your muscle and what muscle means. You get those basics though, And that takes you most of the distance, right?
Mm,
That's more than 80%. I would argue that's 98%, right?
mm.
And everything else is really a fine margin. Most of what I've spent my time doing at Metagenics and the products that we're selling there, I'm certainly a big fan of supplementation. I think there's a huge space for it, but supplementation can't fix
No,
those first five things. Those
no.
first five things have to be dialed in. And so that's where really, that's where really my energy's around now is, okay, how do we bring the awareness of learning those skills to as many people as possible? And how do we help people understand their own biology and own physiology in a deeply profound way?
Yeah, and those five things all work together for good, right? If you get your sleep dialed in, but your blood sugar has been erratic, maybe it'll get better. If you can work out at a certain time of the day, right? All of those things help each other. So
Yes.
you can't really, you could live without exercise. Obviously, lots of people do, but everything will be enhanced by adding that piece in if that's the one piece that isn't dialed in, as you say.
100% right. Like how much easier is it to make a good decision after a great night's sleep
Oh my
than
gosh.
a crummy night's sleep, right?
Yeah.
Just your faculty to make the proper right decision about food, the right decision about should I exercise today? How much easier is it to do all of those things after a good night's sleep? And how much easier is it to have a good night's sleep after a nice bit of exercise and eating healthfully for a day, right? So
Yeah, and
it's
one thing
they all synergize with each other.
I had to learn that I can't exercise hard towards dinner time. If I'm not done with my exercise, if I want to take a really good ride on my Peloton or power walk, I can't do it at 5 because then I don't sleep as well. And that pisses me off because I like to do it at 5. But I just flipped it. So now I do the hard stuff in the first thing in the morning. I learned that because I have a tracker that said, last night you didn't
Yeah.
sleep that well. What happened? So I started tracking and I realized, but anyway, that's an easy thing to change. But I wouldn't have known that had I not had some sort of
Okay.
information.
Yeah, and you got to find the fine balance too. I'm certainly a lean on the tracking side. And tracking for me, I always just see as useful information. I'm not the type of guy that tracking is going to create more anxiety
Yeah, no,
than it settles. But for some people, that is the case, right? So if tracking is actually making it worse, then stop tracking.
I
But
agree.
if but I'm certainly of the camp that more information is better. But I take the approach like I want to get better every day. I always used to tell the analogy of managed sales teams when I'm running all these companies all the life. You take the best race car driver in the world. I don't know, Michael Schumacher, right? And I don't know, driving with my mom to church on Sunday, I could ask my mom, like, hey, mom, what are three things you could do to be a better driver right now? And she'd look over at me and be like, I've been driving since before you or whatever. I don't need to talk about how to be a better driver. She's not working on improving the skill of driving. But you take a race car driver like Michael Schumacher and you look at him and say, okay, what are three things you could do to improve your driving? And he'll tell you the three things. He'll tell you the top three things. He'll probably tell you
Right.
10 things.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how we all need to be about our health. We all need to be in the driver's seat of our health. I'm probably taking that metaphor too far, but health can't be the thing is, yeah, I know what I'm doing because there's always more to learn. There's always more to uncover. This is where we're at today is not where we're going to be in 5 years. And we're probably going to have to relearn some other lessons to manage this next phase of our life, whatever it may be. But I think if we can all take the approach of a race car driver, like I know the three things I need to do to get better right now in my health, and I'm constantly seeking out new ways to improve my health. I think if we can get that mindset dialed in, I think we all have the ability to live with maximum vitality for substantially longer than I think most people do feel vital for. I think the some of the travesties, and I think we can all probably find family members, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews that we know haven't been living their most vitally for some time now. And they've just gotten themselves to the point where they don't even recall what it's like to
Yeah.
live with that great vitality. And I just think that's one of the tragedies of the world. It really comes from missing that approach of saying, okay, health is just what happened to me.
Mhm.
And it's not. It's the consequence, or in some cases at least, it's the results of where you've been. And that doesn't mean that's where you have to stay.
Let me ask you about your app. If people are on medication, is there any way for, so let's say they have a blood panel and it's got all the lipid markers and this and that, they're on a statin and they're on heart meds, and is that taken into consideration in any way, shape, or form when they get the report from your app about,
No, not
okay,
at this point, but it's certainly we take the approach with a lot of the analysis that we do is that you are or should be under the care of a doctor. We are
of
not there to
course.
replace a
Yeah.
doctor. And we say all the time, a little bit the philosophy come from is, and I said it earlier on, one of the dreams of what we're trying to accomplish is really to enhance that relationship. I do think finding a synergistic relationship with somebody in the healthcare industry is critical for all of us, right?
Yeah.
The name of the company is Sage, and that really comes from the notion that we need to have these sages in our life, these folks that kind of help us on this health journey that we're all on. but we want to reinforce that connection and empower that connection in hopefully a more profound way than you would have without it. We would like you to show up at your doctor's office understanding your results and being able to ask meaningful questions about your own health to your doctor to get that kind of really detailed feedback. In an ideal world, too, before you're even sitting in that doctor's office, that doctor has had the ability, she's read your panels, she's read the questions you're going to ask, and she's spent her time researching and if she needs to, or making sure she has her thoughts together to have that deep conversation with you. Because boy, how much of what happens in healthcare just sits on the surface, right? You're there for
Yeah.
15 minutes, and the first 11 are rehashing things you've answered in 9 questionnaires 9 more times and conversations you had 2 years before, right? Maybe doctors are busy too. I'm not trying to criticize them as
No, I get it.
individuals. It's the system is hard, right? So maybe they went to the EMR and they checked the name of your kid so they can sound like they remember who you are. But they haven't been studying, with rare exceptions, they haven't been studying the last 5 years of blood panels and looking at the trends and trajectories and understanding, okay, this is going one way, that's going one way. I'm 50 years old. I've been tracking blood labs now for, I don't know, I've got an Excel file that goes back to when I'm 22 years old. My testosterone today, some of my friends at CrossFit are talking about, should they be on testosterone? Should they not be on testosterone? How does that feel? I actually have the benefit of I can go back and look at what it was when I was 22.
Mm.
And because the thing is with testosterone, yes, there's certainly an objective high or low, but relatively at 50, is it diminishing or not? I'm in the very fortunate camp that it's not. I'm at the same, I was 415 when I was 22. I think 422 in my last blood panel. So that's not super high, but because I have all this data, I'm able to say, okay, actually, no, I'm in the window still of what I've always been. I'm not starting to see the diminishment yet. I'm sure that's going to be part of my future at some point or another,
Yeah.
but it's not the case today.
Yeah, and I like the idea that that the app can review all these data points over years because for most of us, if we're interested in what happened then and what happened, you go to LabCorp, I don't know whether Quest has this, and you can have two lab tests. Like I can have one from November and the one from March next to one another. But what about the year ago November and the year ago March? Luckily, I have a doc who we work this way all the time because I'm on hormone therapy and I have thyroid stuff. But not everybody has that in their doctor, so why not have it in the app, like you said, so you can go and say, hey, I'm thinking of getting hormone replacement. Look at my hormones are in the crapper compared to 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and I'm really starting to feel icky, whatever. I just think it's good for the doctor. It's like, I value and honor your expertise, and here's what I just learned about me. Maybe we can work together. Like you said, you're not putting them down, you're not saying anything bad about them, but they're not trained this way in many instances, and they don't have time in
Right.
most
They don't.
instances.
Time's the
Yeah.
big gap there, and I'm one of these too. And I can't wait for you to get deeper in the app. I've got 18 years of data in the app. I can literally pull up a chart that shows the stuff over 18 years to look at that trend, and it is fascinating, right? And I can look at different points of my life and how getting married was impacting my results because they did have a result, and how really improving how I thought about sleep. The Aura Ring has done wonders for me. I've been using Aura since it first came out. I was one of the beta testers. One of the benefits of being part of Metagenics was these early technology companies that got into this stuff were doing all that. And I think, I mean, with Aura, I don't know how many years of data. Like my little Apple Health
Yeah.
data set, I think at this point is 9 gigs big. It's
I need
ridiculous for
another
how much
phone
how
for
much
my.
data I have. I know I used to carry a radiation tracker around with me because I traveled so much. I was a little bit kooky when it came to data, but really that's what Sage is about. I think so much of our health, it's not a snapshot, it's a moving picture, it's a video, and understanding trends over time and minute changes in trends over time, I think often is more meaningful than just looking at a snapshot. And so it's trying to enable that.
Yeah. So people, sagehealthspan.com. So if somebody wants a blood test through your company, do they go to a lab that you direct them to? Is it a home test? What's happening?
We're actually going to launch home tests later in the year, but right now we're partnered with Quest. Quest has, I think,
Okay.
2,200 locations around the
Yeah.
country. And it's a partnership with Quest. Quest makes it as easy as we possibly can. You can purchase through us. We've got wonderful pricing because we do so much of this and because of our scale. We can give the great price back to you. I think
You
if you were to
can,
do
like,
you were to do the comprehensive panel through your doctor or cash pay, it'd be about 4 or 5 times what we're charging.
yeah.
We're trying to be really reasonable about that because we want people to have those tests. And then there's certain things like you don't even have to get the whole comprehensive panel. If you have been going to your annual physical and you've been getting the 24 to 48 biomarkers that most annual physicals give you every year, You can put that in and we'll just tell you the ones you're missing. And a lot of times, maybe you're not missing them. If your cholesterol's in range and at some point in your life you've had your LP little a tested, and so we know your status there, we're not going to recommend you get anything. If your cholesterol is on the high side, we're going to say, okay, let's look at your APOB. Let's look at one or two things. Let's pull the string a little bit and just make sure everything's going in the right direction. If it's not, we want you to go see your doctor. If it is, great. That knowledge is power. You know where you're at. So much of it is really that. We could probably get into women's hormones panels and spend 3 more podcasts on that. But it's a very similar thing there. It's okay. You need to understand how estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone are moving together in synchronous, right? This is a symphony that's moving in very different times of the month and at very different ways during your life. And so if you're not looking at all of those in detail and understanding how one is impacting the other, you're missing a huge part of this. We like to say, instead of listening to the beautiful symphony of your hormones, you're just hearing one instrument. And I think that misses out on that understanding. And so there's so much to this. I just speak about it like it's complex. Our goal at Sage is to make it as simple and understandable as possible. We don't want this to be complex. We don't think it should be obscure or hard to understand. So we really try to make it as plain as possible.
Yeah, and somewhere on your website, I think it's like the democratization of getting info. You're having the labs available to people makes it that much easier because LabCorp only has a few, Quest has a different few, and they're more expensive, but they also don't, there's nothing at the end of it except the data, right? Like your app is
Mhm,
going to tell me what's going on with the data. And that's a really
mhm.
important piece because you can't always get your doctor. Just call them up and go, hey, I just had a thyroid panel. Can we talk? Yeah, no, not really. You're gonna have to make an appointment. And even then, they may not have the same input or opinion to share as what it sounds like your app is going to.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, and we'll tell you also when you go to labs, right? So this is, I don't want to get into the obscure things, but labs define normal range. The way they define a normal range, it's a statistical process, right? They're going to do a
Mm-hmm.
bell curve of everybody that's been tested by them. And as we know, how America is not made up of 100% healthy people, right?
Yeah.
And so normal is, where do you sit on the average of the population that they have in their data set? And I think that's great to know, but we also like to say, okay, what is an optimal range? And so we'll give you that information too. We'll say, okay, for this biomarker, here's what the best science says about, for your age, sex, and whatever, what an optimal range would look like. And here's where you are relative to that optimal range, which might be a different range than the lab has in their normalization set. We think those insights are pretty interesting to have as well.
Yeah. And especially if a woman doesn't feel well, but the lab range, if she's in that normal range and the doctor can only say you're in normal, like your wife, but there's something going on. So optimal is so much different than normal, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to be normal aging. I want to be optimal aging.
And I'm sure you say this to your clients and your podcast population all the time. If you don't feel right, don't accept from your doctor, it's just whatever. It's
Yeah.
just menopause. It's just your age. Just don't. We can't live in that world. That world is not the world that I want to be part of. That I think any of us want to part of. I think that's not why that doctor went to medical school. I've never met a doctor that went to medical school because they wanted to tell people that don't feel good. It just, they don't have the time. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the information. You might be working with the wrong doctor. Whatever. Don't accept that. Find a different doctor. Find someone that you can connect with, that understands you, that wants to understand you, that wants to give you the time you need. Feel empowered for that. That's part of health agency too, is don't accept, the answer of, it's just,
Right.
you name it.
You're just getting
Uh,
brushed aside. That's dismissive
yeah,
to say, oh, it's just this.
yeah.
Brent Eck, I think that's a great place to end, unless you have anything to add.
I don't. I'm so thankful for your time. And listen, I really admire what you're doing and what you're bringing to the community that you serve. I'm appreciative of you having me here.
Thank you so much. I was just jazzed when I saw you come across our little Podmatch platform. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about cool stuff in the future of medicine and 3.0. I love that. Atia says the same thing that you do. It's like medicine 3.0.
Borrowed
New
that very liberally
paradigm.
from him. I'll tell you that very much. I'm a big fanboy of the Peter Attia world. There's no question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, thanks again. And people be well till next time. I'll be back with another fabulous guest in a week.
Thank you.